This video will provide answers to the following questions. What is a cross-platform component? Why create a cross-platform component? How to create a cross-platform component? And APL64 Cross-platform component packages APL64-based functionality into a file which can be used in an application system. The APL64 Cross-platform component is a NuGet package file. The NuGet package file is a specially formatted zip file which is a widely accepted and very convenient way to package, distribute, and use software components. The NuGet package file contains a .NET assembly. .NET is an open-source, no-cost toolkit available on most operating system platforms, including Windows, Linux, Android, and Apple. The .NET assembly is a compiled computer code file which contains APL64 workspaces and any necessary APL64 component or native files. The APL64 workspace contains APL64 programmer-developed functions. In and APL64 cross-platform component, APL64 programmer-selected functions are exposed as .NET methods. .NET methods can be easily used by applications using other programming languages. Most production-use software being created today is composed of components. Software components are developed by programmers who are experts in specific application features such as input capture, business rules and algorithms, data persistence and output rendering. Software components are implemented using the programming language most suited to the specific application feature being implemented. The strength of APL technology is the implementation of business rules and algorithmic software. Because an APL64 cross-platform component is based on .NET, the same APL code can be used within application systems using multiple programming languages. On most operating system platforms, including Windows, Linux, Android, and Apple. On most hardware types including desktop and laptop workstations, tablets, phones, and web servers. Because an APL64 cross-platform component is a NuGet package, deployment and use of APL64 software is simplified. The value of existing APL-based software investment is preserved because APL64 cross-platform components can be transparently used within an enterprise by non-APL programmers. Developing application systems using components, including APL64 cross-platform components, means valuable enterprise resources. Especially programmers with domain expertise can concentrate only on appropriate application components. Frequently changing application components, such as user interface or output rendering, can be improved without affecting core algorithmic functionality or data persistence integrity. And APL64 cross-platform component is designed to support APL-based processing of data resulting in arrays of calculated values and text, etc. A cross-platform component is an APL64-based calculation engine which can receive data from a .NET application, process that data and return the processing results to the .NET application. Because an APL64 component is designed to be cross-platform, no APL function in the component can display a graphical user interface (GUI). Exceptions in and APL64 component must be passed to the containing .NET application as exception codes and/or exception texts in and application-specific protocol. An APL64 cross-platform is based on an APL64 workspace containing one or more APL64 programmer-defined public functions and, if necessary, non-public APL64 programmer-defined functions and variables. APL64 public functions are those APL64 user-defined functions which will be exposed to a user of a cross-platform component as .NET methods. APL64 user-defined functions which are not specified by the APL64 programmer as public will not be exposed to the user of a cross-platform component. The CPC creation utility is available in the APL64 developer version. When the required and optional fields in the utility dialog are completed by the APL64 programmer, the utility will create the CPC as a NuGet package file. After appropriate testing by the APL64 programmer, the NuGet package file can be deployed directly to programmer user or published to a public or private NuGet package repository to be accessed by authorized programmer users. APL64 public functions are those APL64 user-defined functions which will be exposed to a user of a cross-platform component as .NET methods. An APL64 public function is marked as public by the :public function header prefix. The .NET data types of the arguments and results of an APL64 public function are specified in the function header. The APL64 public function syntax supports individual arguments of any shape or rank which are supported by .NET and any data type supported by APL64. Multiple results, multiple right arguments, and no left arguments are supported. The .NET object type for APL64 nested objects. Because an APL64 component is designed to be cross-platform, no APL function in the APL64 cross-platform component can display a graphical user interface. Exceptions in an APL64 component must be passed to the containing .NET application as exception codes or exception texts. When an APL64 public function is used within APL64, its behavior is the same as a non-public function. The APL64 cross-platform creation dialog in the APL64 developer version has these required fields. The path on the APL64 programmer's workstation to the APL64 programmer-prepared APL64 workspace containing one or more APL64 public functions. The path on the APL64 programmer's workstation where the utility will create the cross-platform component NuGet file. The cross-platform component name, which will be the NuGet package name, if different than the workspace name. The cross-platform component .NET class name, since the APL64 public functions are exposed as .NET method members of the .NET class with the specified name. A list of any addition APL64 workspaces, component or native files required to support the APL-based functionality. .NET assembly metadata including copyright text, product name, file version and company name. NuGet package GUID and ID, if different than company name concatenated with the component name. Once the required and optional fields in the APL64 cross-platform creation dialog are completed by the APL64 programmer, The Create button of the dialog is clicked and the APL64 Cross-platform component is created in the target folder. The application using the APL64 Cross-platform component must be capable of calling a .NET method. Any .NET programming language, including C#, F#, and Visual Basic, can do this, as well as other programming languages such as JavaScript in and applicable environment. When the APL64 public function is to be used, the application system creates an instance of the containing APL64.NET class and calls the public function method as a .NET method. The APL64.NET class can include more than one APL64 public function, each exposed as a .NET method. Thank you for watching this video summary of the APL64 cross-platform component technology. Technical assistance for APL64 subscribers is available by contacting help@apl2000.com. For customized consulting, contact sales@apl2000.com. In the APL64 developer version, the Help menu contains APL64 cross-platform detailed documentation with examples. The Options menu contains the menu item for the APL64 cross-platform component creation utility.